Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel. The country that once turned nuclear power into a national religion now finds itself praying that its aging reactors simply stay online until winter is over. When the nuclear anchor of Europe starts drifting, the whole electricity market moves with it, and the bill lands in your mailbox, not in some glossy Brussels report. France built its nuclear fleet as a giant industrial machine. Standardized reactors, cheap baseload, proud slogans about energy independence. For decades, it more or less worked. Nuclear gave around 70% of French electricity, made France a major exporter, and helped keep continental prices in check. Then physics, rust, and neglected maintenance quietly arrived on stage. By 2022, EDF had 56 reactors with an average age of almost 40 years, many of them built in the late 1970s and 1980s. When you run steel, welds, and cooling systems that long, they stop caring about ministerial speeches and start answering only to corrosion, fatigue, and time. Here is where the story stops making sense. In the middle of an energy crisis, the supposed nuclear powerhouse of Europe managed to have more than half its reactors offline at various points in 2022 because of stress corrosion, cracking discovered on safety-related pipes, plus a backlog of inspections and repairs. Nuclear output collapsed to around 279 terawatt hours, the lowest level in 30 years. France, the traditional exporter, briefly became a net importer of electricity and helped push power prices in Europe into the stratosphere. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. When a system runs at full capacity for decades without corresponding reinvestment, the bill always arrives, just usually not for the politicians who designed it. On the money side, the result was predictable. EDF, already heavily indebted, posted a net loss of about 17.9 billion euros in 2022, its worst result ever, and its debt climbed above 60 billion. The French state responded by renationalizing EDF to 100% ownership and forcing it to sell part of its nuclear output at capped prices to protect households from the very price spikes created by the fleet's low availability. In plain language, the state bailed out its own utility from the consequences of its own policies, using taxpayers who are also electricity customers. Elegant circularity. Meanwhile, the new generation solution is stuck in its own time loop. Flamanville-3, the flagship EPR reactor in Normandy, started with an estimated cost of about 3.3 billion euros and a planned startup around 2012. It is now more than a decade late, with costs revised to over 13 billion euros and fuel loading only starting in 2024. This is the part no politician wants to explain on TV. You cannot simultaneously promise cheap, clean nuclear, freeze prices, delay maintenance, overregulate, underinvest, and then act surprised when the engineering schedule mutinies. At the same time, Paris has announced a renaissance, at least 6 new EPR2 reactors, with an initial price tag of around 52 billion euros, plus an option to grow that to 14 units later. On paper, this is France rearming its grid. Life extensions for existing 900 megawatt reactors up to 50 years and beyond, combined with new units that should enter service sometime in the 2030s. In reality, it means decades of parallel costs. Paying to fix old machines, paying to build new ones, and paying to keep prices politically acceptable while doing both. From the outside, the incentives are clear and slightly depressing. The French state wants 3 things at once: preserve nuclear as national prestige and export brand, ensure cheap enough power for industry, and avoid social explosions over energy bills. EDF wants regulatory stability, realistic timelines, and a way to finance upgrades without being used as a piggy bank for every tariff freeze. Brussels wants decarbonisation targets met and a European market that pretends electrons have no nationality. Markets want predictable output and less political interference. None of these actors get what they really want, so they improvise. Here's where the story stops making sense for the wider EU. When French reactors are down, German gas plants and whatever coal is left fill the gap, and interconnectors move electricity at crisis prices across borders. Households in Belgium, Italy, or the Baltics end up paying for repairs at French reactors they have never seen, via wholesale prices and EU-level mechanisms. If you are in Germany or Poland, I am curious how this looks from your side. Is French nuclear maintenance just a phrase in analyst reports, or do you see it in your actual bills? For ordinary people, the picture is simple. High and volatile prices become the new normal. Governments patch the pain with subsidies and tax cuts, which blow holes in budgets already weakened by pandemics and rearmament. Industries that depend on stable, low-cost baseload, from chemicals to metals, reconsider where to invest. Some leave, some shut down, some gamble on the promise that the French fleet will be back to normal in a few years. Meanwhile, EDF is ordered to both invest massively and keep tariffs socially acceptable, which in practice means more debt on its balance sheet and more contingent liabilities on the states. This is the part no politician wants to explain on TV. If you turn a critical infrastructure asset into a political toy for 30 years, you do not get a clean energy transition, you get a very expensive midlife crisis. The corrosion that inspectors find on stainless steel welds is just a physical symptom of a deeper institutional corrosion. Delayed decisions, contradictory goals, and the refusal to admit that a fleet designed in the 1970s needs 21st century money, not 1970s slogans. From where I sit in Lithuania, inside the EU, but not hypnotized by its press releases, France is not a unique villain and not a heroic savior. It is simply the most visible example of a broader Western pattern. We have built entire economies on complex systems and then acted surprised when they require complex maintenance. If you're in Southern Europe, I'd be interested to know whether your experience of power bills and blackout warnings matches the optimistic narrative about European energy solidarity, or if it feels more like you are paying for someone else's hangover. In the end, the French nuclear story is not about atoms, it is about governance. Old reactors can run safely if you invest early and honestly. New reactors can be built if you accept real costs and timelines. But when every decision is postponed, politicized, and wrapped in grand language, you do not get energy security. You get rolling repairs, rolling crises, and rolling excuses. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and try to remember, slogans don't power grids, systems do.